Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Grivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Grivaradari Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol. Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Guru Parampara ki, Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Shri Shri Nitai Mai Pusha Shri ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Nath Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Giridhar Lal ki Jai, Shri Nrsimhadev Bhagwan ki Jai. Reading from Prabhupada, he built a house in which the whole world can live. The abridged version of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. The summer of 1966 moved into August, and Prabhupada kept good health. For him, these were happy days. New Yorkers complained of the summer heat waves, but this caused no inconvenience to one accustomed to the 100-degree plus temperatures of Vrindavan's blazing summers. It is like India, he said, as he went without a shirt, seeming relaxed and at home. He had thought that in America he would have to subsist on boiled potatoes, otherwise there would be nothing but meat. But here he was, happily eating the same rice, dal, and chapatis, and cooking on the same three-star cooker as in India. Work on the Srimad Bhagavatam had also gone on regularly since he had moved into the Second Avenue apartment. Now Krishna was bringing these sincere young men who were cooking, typing, hearing him regularly, chanting Hare Krishna and asking for more. Prabhupada was still a solitary preacher, free to stay or go, writing his books in his own intimate relationship with Krishna, quite independent of the boys in the storefront. But now he had taken the International Society for Krishna Consciousness as his spiritual child. The inquiring young men, some of whom had already been chanting steadily for over a month, were like stumbling spiritual infants, and he felt responsible for guiding them. They were beginning to consider him their spiritual master, trusting him to lead them into spiritual life. Although they were unable to immediately follow the multifarious rules that Brahmins and Vaishnavas in India followed, he was hopeful. According to Rupa Goswami, the most important principle was that one should somehow or other become Krishna conscious. People should chant Hare Krishna and render devotional service. They should engage whatever they had in the service to Krishna. And Prabhupada was exercising this basic principle of Krishna consciousness to the furthest limit the history of Vaishnavism had ever seen. Srila Prabhupada ki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2, a Jamil delivered by the Vishnudutas, text 35. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So tata yatishyami. So tata yatishyami. Yata chitendriyani Yata chitendriyani Yata na bhuya atmanam Yata na bhuya atmanam Ante tamasi majjaye Ante tamasi majjaye Soham tata yatishyami Yata chitendriyani Yata na bhuya atmanam Ande tamasi majjaye Soham tata yatishyami Yatachandriyanila Yatanabuya Atmanam Ande Tamasi Majjaye Soham Tata Yishyami Yatachandriyanila Yatanabuya Atmanam Ande Tamasi Majjaye Shami So such a person I in that way. Excuse me a minute, I'm just kidding. Yatishyami, I shall endeavor. Yata chitta indriya, controlling the mind and the senses. Anila, and the internal airs. Yata, so that na, not puya, again. Atmanam, my soul. And he, in darkness. Tamasi, in ignorance. Marjaye, I drown. Translation. I am such a sinful person, but since I have now gotten this opportunity, I must completely control my mind, life, and senses, and always engage in devotional service, so that I may not fall again into the deep darkness and ignorance of material life. Please repeat. I am such a sinful person. Since I have now gotten this opportunity, I must completely control my mind, life, and senses, and always engage in devotional service, so that I may not fall again into the deep darkness and ignorance of material life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Every one of us should have this determination. We have been elevated to an exalted position by the mercy of Krishna and the spiritual master. And if we remember that this is a great opportunity and pray to Krishna that we will not fall again, our lives will be successful. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshranmalitayena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagna Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagna Lalita Shri Vishavan Vitam Shra Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevich Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I trust the blessings of the Vaishnavas to enable me to say something meaningful and valuable in regard to this verse and purport. It's a very dramatic point in the whole pastime, very important point, and this point, Dharmiel has become fully aware of his life. He's fully aware of his childhood and the mercy granted to him by his spiritual master, by his parents, and remembering how he was enlivened in devotional service his youth. And then he was fully remembering how his heart became disturbed and contaminated by the contact with the mode of ignorance. And then he became aware of how he very quickly lost all of his brahminical qualities and engaged in very abominable activities. And now he was fully aware of the wonderful dialogue that he'd heard between the servants of Lord Vishnu and the servants of Yamaraj. And now he's experienced great lamentation and sorrow at the suffering that it caused many living entities, but especially his parents and his wife. So certainly, when he says, I must completely control my mind, life, and senses, and always engage in the devotional service. So probably that's at that moment in his life, that's probably the most determined he's ever been in his life. Sometimes perhaps we have an unfortunate circumstance, perhaps a like a severe illness, or perhaps some extreme mental anxiety, or some bereavement, or some having to deal with some very difficult conflict in relationships. So in those kind of circumstances, we may make this kind of resolution. But, not many of us have been granted this amazing darshan of this conversation between the Lord's devotees. So he was definitely when he says when he was making this resolution, he was definitely in the right situation to make that resolution. But nevertheless, he wasn't proud, and because he said, he says, so that I may not fall again into the deep darkness and ignorance. So he wasn't saying, oh, now I'm never going to fall again. He wasn't saying that. He was saying, now I've realized how dangerous material entanglement is, and therefore I must always engage in devotional service. And he realized that the devotional service that he engaged in his youth wasn't sufficient to protect him. He wasn't sufficiently afraid of material energy at that time. He wasn't sufficiently absorbed in Krishna's that he was able to protect himself from that circumstantial contamination with the mode of ignorance. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport really reiterates this point, that we've been exalted to this position. We've been elevated to an exalted position. So it's an exalted position of illumination. We're being given by mercy of Srila Prabhupada, who has revealed to us the knowledge of all of the previous acharyas, and has revealed to us the potency of Lord Chaitanya's mission, and has revealed to us Krishna's pastimes. So Srila Prabhupada has given us, he's given us more knowledge than anyone has ever been given in such a short space of time. So we've got that vision, and living in the association of devotees, we've got an opportunity to remind each other that we've got that special vision, that we've got that special perspective, that special, what's the word? So when you go up a mountain, or when you're looking down on a great area, then you can see things that normally you can't see. So Srila Prabhupada has given us that panoramic view of material life and of spiritual life. He's given us a panoramic view of the nature of material entanglement and the nature of the remedy for that entanglement. But he's warning us here that he's given us that vision. We're not actually in that position. We don't have a we don't own that position. It's not we haven't got control over that position even. But we've been elevated there by his mercy. And that we must pray that we will not fall again constantly. So just as Sri Krishna mentioned in a class earlier in this section, that Srila Prabhupada was once praying in front of the deities, and a disciple asked him what he was praying for, and Srila Prabhupada said he was praying that he would never fall down. And yeah, so we should understand that humility is necessary to retain that vision, to be able to have that exalted vision by which we can see the whole picture, and therefore we can be prepared to act appropriately when we're faced with a great challenge. So certainly Srila Prabhupada was faced with many great challenges, and we also will be faced with great challenges in our spiritual life. So in this verse, there's some words which I found particularly helpful and interesting. One is Yatishyami Aisha Endeavor. And this word appears in Kapila Dev's instructions to Devahuti in chapter 25, the third canto. And this is chapter text 26. Bhaktya pumanjati viraga indriya drishya shrutanmad rachanan uchintaya chasya yato grahane yogo yukto yatishyate ridrivi yogamagai. Translation: thus consciously engaged in devotional service in the association of devotees, a person gains distaste for sense gratification, both in this world and in the next, by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. This process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is able to control the mind. So it's interesting that in the verse in question, in the sixth canto, Srila Prabhupada translates, "I must completely control my mind, life, and senses." And in the Sanskrit is the word anila, the internal airs. But sometimes that anila refers to pranayama, controlling the prana in the body by practicing mystic yoga. But here in this verse, Srila Prabhupada says that by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord, this process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is able to control the mind. And in the purport of this verse, Srila Prabhupada says that one who is fixed in mystic power is not disturbed by the allurement of this world or that world. He is interested in the matters of spiritual understanding or the spiritual situation. This sublime situation is very easily attained by the easiest process, bhakti yoga. Yoga margai. A very suitable word here is used as ridribi, or very easy. And also in this third canto, so this word ridribi, very easy, but it also means unpretentious. So, and Prabhupada talks about humility and unpretentious practice of bhakti yoga. But although we've been elevated to this position of like panoramic vision, which may give us like a feeling of being like the demigods. But it's essential that we remain very humble and understand that that's not really our real situation, but we've just been given that vision by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And excuse me a moment. I'm not a multitasker. I can't turn pages and think at the same time. Okay, here it is. So, this is chapter 19, verse 36. Tam Sukarajam Rijubi Anya Sharanain Ribi Kritagya Kona Seveta Turarajam Sadubi. What grateful soul is there who would not render his loving service to such a great master as the personality of Godhead? The Lord can be easily pleased by spotless devotees who resort exclusively to him for protection, though the unrighteous man finds it difficult to propitiate him. So although we've been given this vision, we must be aware that there's a danger of feeling some kind of pride. There's a great danger. Here, Srila Prabhupada says that ungrateful persons are those who do not understand how much benefit they are deriving by the arrangement of the Lord. Anyone, therefore, with simple heart of gratefulness must be Krishna conscious and offer devotional service to the Lord. Those who are actually thieves and rogues do not recognize or acknowledge the benedictions offered to them by the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada was such a person, had a simple heart of gratefulness. And he would sometimes cry out of a feeling of gratitude to the deities for coming and giving their darshan to the devotees. He would, when Srila Prabhupada, when a gentle-hearted devotee cries, it's usually out of this feeling of gratitude. Until we come to that platform, and let's pray that we will one day come to that platform of being like completely and perpetually feeling very grateful to Krishna and to Srila Prabhupada. Until that time, and even after that time, because Srila Prabhupada, although Srila Prabhupada is situated in that platform, still as he says, he's constantly praying that he doesn't fall down. So until that time, then there are so many times when Srila Prabhupada says, therefore we must constantly chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And it was a very nice coincidence this morning, just like we often have coincidences when we read Srila Prabhupada's Leela Amrita, there's a connection with the verse. So this is Srila Prabhupada here is in New York in the late summer of 1966. And at that time, he was lecturing on Bhagavad Gita every day. And I listen to those lectures very often when I'm cooking. And one of those lectures on chapter 8, verses 12 to 14, Srila Prabhupada says, so this is the process of Krishna consciousness. Ananya cheta satatam yomam smarati nityasa. Smarati means remembering nityasa, continuously. Krishna declares that he becomes easily available to someone who is always remembering him. The highest, most valuable thing becomes very inexpensive for one who takes up this process of Krishna consciousness. Tasyaham sulabhata nitya yuktasya yogina. Because he's continuously engaged in such a process of yoga, bhakti yoga. Krishna says, I am very, I am very cheap. So Srila Prabhupada is speaking to the hippies in Second Avenue here. We perhaps shouldn't use that language now, but Srila Prabhupada is saying, Krishna is saying, I am very cheap. I am easily available. Why should you try for any hard process? Simply chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And you can chant 24 hours a day. There are no rules or regulations, either in the street or in the subway, at your home or in your office. There is no tax, no expense. Why don't you do it? It's interesting that lecture was published in Beyond Birth and Death, which is of all the small books, perhaps one that's been distributed the most in the last 50 years. So the highest, most valuable thing becomes very inexpensive, the one who takes up this process of Krishna consciousness, because he's continuously engaged in chanting Hare Krishna. So we've been given the highest, most valuable vision. We've been elevated to the most exalted position. But the paradox is that we've been elevated to that highest position so we can become the most humble and feel the most fallen, and feel the most grateful. And so if we're not feeling grateful, and it's definitely something I don't really experience a lot of gratitude, in the sense that I don't feel grateful. I can feel grateful for knowledge, but I don't always feel grateful for the association of devotees. I don't really appreciate my good fortune. So therefore I can understand that I haven't really controlled my mind and my senses, and I need the potency of mystic yoga, by which I can actually transform my heart, transform my life as, and that process is constant engagement in devotional service, beginning with chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So we may not feel the inclination to come for the deities, and we may feel it's difficult to pray every day that we won't fall down. Anyway, it would definitely be a good practice to establish, to do that, undoubtedly. Perhaps it's difficult because we haven't got into the habit of doing it every day. When I'm saying we, I'm talking about myself. But we do chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every day, and that is certainly an opportunity to practice this, or to revive this mood of gratitude, because it's a prayer. O Krishna, all attractive personality, supreme energy, reservoir of all pleasure, please engage me in your devotional service. And this devotional service is the most powerful mystic power to transform our polluted consciousness. So, sometimes we give the example when the powerful river Ganges flows down into the Bay of Bengal, and then it kind of churns up so much like of the sand from the bottom of the ocean that it creates islands. That's what they call the Sundarabans islands. So when the powerful material energy is It's like when we've become absorbed in the material energy for so long, and then we're kind of again becoming reunited with the spiritual energy, then there's some disturbance there. It's like churning up churning up of all of the material desires. It causes conflict and difficulty. And we look for something to hold on to. And like we hold on to these irons and we think, oh yeah, we hold on to these irons and we like feel that we've found some security in the turmoil. But actually those islands are very like temporary. They can just be washed away at any time. And unless we're connected very deeply to the instruction of the spiritual master and very deeply to hearing the holy name and to reading the Shastra in the association of devotees, then we'll take false shelter of things which may appear spiritual, but actually still part of the material energy. So the yogis are aware of this. The yogis who practice pranayama and who practice dharana and dhyana, they're aware of the subtle tricks of the mind and the heart to like offer false shelter. So for that reason, they're like go off solitude and practice tapasya and to really like try to become completely free from the illusion of material energy. But it's not possible, and it wasn't recommended by Kapila Dev to Devahut in Satyuga. The great Bhagavat devotees have always recommended the process of hearing and chanting as the most powerful mystic process for controlling the heart and mind, because within that process is this element of gratitude and of constant offering of prayers to the Lord and of developing this relationship of love with the Lord. And that's the reality. Anything else which may appear to be shelter may just be like one of those islands. It may exist for 100 years or 1,000 years, but it's sometimes going to be washed away. So there's another nice word in the purport in today's verse. It's majate or majaye. Ande tamasi majaye. I must always engage in devotional service so that I may not fall again into the deep darkness and ignorance of material life. And in the word for word, the word is majaye, drowning. So this is like so we've been in the material ocean for so many lifetimes that we're not trying to get out anymore, because we've developed a mindset and a body which feels at home. So we're like the entities in the bottom of the ocean who've got their own like universe down there, and they're not aware of anything else. So we've completely drowned in the material energy. But Krishna describes that the process of becoming free from that illusion is to immerse ourselves or drown ourselves in the pastimes in the descriptions of his pastimes. And in the Dhammadashkam prayers that we sing every year in Kartik, then we sing Iti Viksvalilabhi Ananda Kunde Swagoshan Nima Jantam Akyapayintam. So this is the great devotees are encouraging us to drown ourselves in hearing the pastimes of Lord Damodar with his associates in Vrindavan. And he's saying that those residents, Swagoshan, that's the cowherd community of Vrindavan, they're actually Ananda Kunde Nima Janta. they're drowning themselves in the nectarian lake of Krishna's pastimes. So we've been, by having the blessings and the association of Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas that Srila Prabhupada has afforded us, then we've got an opportunity to absorb our ears and our voice and our heart in this like nectarian leela of Krishna's pastimes, and this drown ourselves, as we described in Srila Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela chapter 7, that Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, with their Sankirtan movement, and they're drowning all of the living entities who are in the material world, and that the seed of lust is being what's the word, inundated. The Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they're inundating the material atmosphere with the nectar of devotional service, of chanting the holy name and hearing the pastimes of the Lord. So, yeah, and so this, we need to incorporate these elements as a regular practice in our daily lives, praying, chanting, hearing, discussing with devotees, reading about the lives of Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas, and we need to also be introspective. Am I feeling grateful? Am I feeling fallen? Am I feeling like, what's the word? Well, desperate. Am I feeling that this is like, that I have to do this? Am I feeling the same determination that Ajahn felt at that time? Or am I feeling the same determination that I felt when I was in that situation? I mean, I know that I have, there have been times when I felt, yes, I must completely control my mind. But I know I'm not in that consciousness now. So how do we do that? How do we maintain that resolution? And we need the help of the devotees to do this. So I'll stop there. Are there any questions or comments? Excuse me a minute, I'm just...
I've just been reading a book about counseling, and it's talking about grieving. And it mentions that a common dynamic of people that grieve is when they reach a point where they're able to cope with it, is when they come to the understanding that the person that they love is still with them, still present with them in some way. A kind of intuitive reaching out to this spiritual dimension. So in that sense, people can intuitively sense that these truths are a fact, even though they may not have some direct experience. And these could even be atheists, but they suddenly get this feeling which contradicts everything that they've thought of so far, when they go through the mourning process. So I just thought that was interesting.
Any other questions? Other?
Thank you very much for class. I'm just wondering about, you're saying we take shelter of things that we think are spiritual, but they're actually still temporary. If you maybe give some examples or some like warnings of pitfalls that we can think we're taking shelter of because it's somehow related to ISKCON, or but it's actually somehow it's still material. If you could give some examples, please.
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, in one sense, the Srila Prabhupada says everything is spiritual. So for a pure devotee, then like Srila Prabhupada, especially a Goshtyanandi, a preacher, then he can engage many things and many people that we wouldn't be able to engage, and dovetail that element in the spiritual life. And because we're trying to please Srila Prabhupada by engaging in giving Krishna consciousness to others, then we may find ourselves in a situation in which we see the potential for engaging in a dialogue with someone over a philosophical issue or an environmental issue or some emotional issue. And it may to us feel that this is a great opportunity to please Srila Prabhupada, at least my spiritual master, to engage some person in transcendental life. But it may also be like an intellectual distraction for us, because our connection with the Shastra and our connection with the instructions of our spiritual master, our connection with like the pure chanting of the holy name is not strong enough to keep us anchored. So we may, and there's a danger that it may revive in us some previous attachment that we perhaps we may not even be aware of, or even if we were aware of it, we weren't aware how strong that attachment was. So, is that helpful? Can you say your question again?
Yeah, I was asking for. Yeah,
Put the microphone like that.
You gave examples of things that we can convince ourselves are spiritual, but are still material attachments. Really, we can sort of find excuses.
Yeah, well, they are spiritual in the sense that if they're spiritual in the sense that our motivation is correct, that we want to engage something or someone, or we want to engage some group of people in devotional service or in Krishna consciousness. So that the motivation is spiritual, but the means by which we attempt to do that may reactivate a kind of mentality in us, it may reactivate a kind of controllership mentality that we had previously, especially if it's connected to our previous job or our previous relationship or our previous employment. So, and we may not be aware, we won't be aware of it. We may be aware to some degree of that happening, but there will certainly be certain aspects of it that we're not aware of, and it can become we could become overpowered by this sort of feeling of controllership, which is very intoxicating. As Srila Rupa Goswami said, the most intoxicating emotion is the feeling, is the conviction that we are right, the conviction that we are correct is the most intoxicating emotion. So obviously when we're kind of feeling empowered, perhaps by Srila Prabhupada's instruction to try and engage others, we may feel empowered by that. But there's a danger that may lead us to being proud of our ability to convince others that we are right, and forgetting that whatever power we have is coming from Krishna and is coming from Srila Prabhupada. But anyway, so in those kind of circumstances, you really need to be having regular guidance from your Shiksha Gurus, from like the devotees who you live with or communicate with regularly, to ask whether it's appropriate. I mean, this story of Ajahn, in one sense, it's like it's a very extreme example to hammer the point home. But you could think of a more something in like our own lives, you know, that it's not that we see some situation that completely like destroys our devotional creeper overnight, but just something which subtly revives a desire. You know, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, in the sense that I lived in the Brahmachari ashram for 18 years or so, and just was engaged in book distribution 6 days a week, and then my service changed, and I had more time to read and more time to like see what was going on, what had been going on in the world in the previous 18 years. And I mean, so at the age of, you know, actually very early in my life, I don't know whenever it was, but from as long as I can remember in my life, I'd rejected the material world, at least intellectually anyway. But then not having really like exercised my intellect so much, and then attracted to many philosophies and things which have become prominent in the world, and not just philosophies, but different political and social movements. Not attracted in the sense that I was going to like join them, but attracted in the sense that I think, oh, there's a little bit of something to. I wasn't thinking there's something to relish here, but I became aware over time that my spiritual practice had become lessened because of the time I was spending in those practices. So although I was thinking at the time that what I was doing was actually following Srila Prabhupada and following my spiritual master, who wanted us to give Krishna consciousness to a wider group of people. That's what I was thinking. So in the sense, the motivation may have been spiritual, but the actual activity itself wasn't spiritual. So that's like but fortunately, due to the protection of my Shiksha Gurus, then they're gradually pulling me out of the ocean of darkness and like trying to get me up in the morning. Although it's not easy for them. Okay, so it's okay. Hopefully that'll protect you from many years of drowning in intellectual oceans of Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Kodanatai Mai Prashashi ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanandi. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai. If you want to help me, don't say Javat Vasi ki jai, okay? If you're really my friend, don't say Javat Vasi. Say something else. And say Javat Vasi Shiksha Gurus ki jai. I think you say that. Javat Vasi Shiksha Gurus ki jai.